Om Namo Venkatesaya. Shuklambaradharam Vishnum Shasivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavathanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashanteye Vyasaya Vishnu Rupaya Vyasa Rupaya Vishnave Namo Vai Brahmanideye Vasishtaya Namo Namaha. Tismarana Matrena Janma Samsara Bandhanat Vimuchate Namastasmi Vishnave Prabha Vishnave Lakshmi Nata Samarambam Nate Amana Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Partaya Pradibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshiniim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayiniim Ambatvamanusandatami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Namo Venkatesaya. My pranams everybody. So we have been talking about Krishna's discussion with Arjuna on chapter 8, Achara Brahma Yogam. So yesterday we started the 8th chapter. So Arjuna is asking several questions. What is Brahma? What is Adhyatmam? What is Karma? What is Adibhutam? What is Adidevam? What is Adiyajnaha? And then Prayana, that is at the time of leaving this body, how does one think about you? That is the questions he is asking. And Bhagavan is answering all of them. So let's move on to sloka number 5.
Antakaale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yaf prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah.
This is one of the important slokas of chapter 8. Antakale cha mameva. So that means at the final stages of one's life, that is one is leaving this body, physical body. Antakale cha mameva smaran. That means he is thinking about me only. Mam eva means only one. So that means he's thinking about me only. Mameva smaran, thinking about me, remembering about me. Muktva kalevaram. Kalevaram is this physical body. Kalevaram, that means muktva means he's leaving this body. So at the time of his final stages of death, that is at the time of leaving this physical body, a person who thinks about me only, yap prayati, yaha antakale smarati, saha, that person, prayati madbhavam, that means he is reaching my nature. That means he is ultimately reaching the Bhagavan's abode. Yati, that means he is completely reaching my nature. Na asti, that means na asti yatra samshaya. Atra samshaya, that means there is no doubt at all. Arjuna, don't have any doubts at all. A person who at the time of leaving this body thinks about me and me only at the time of leaving this body, then he only attains my nature. There is absolutely no doubt on this question. So that means, that is previous in the 30th, in the 7th chapter, the 7th one, Bhagavan said, Prayana Kale Pichamam. So that means that is the question which Arjuna is asking. Of course, Arjuna is asking the question, how do I remember at the last stage? So Bhagavan is going to come to that. So he's just starting with that, proceeding in that direction. He's saying that a person who leaves this body at the time of, the time, a person who remembers me at the time of leaving this body, ultimately reaches my nature or reaches me only. There is absolutely don't have any doubt on this at all. That's what he's saying. Now let's see 5, 6, and 7 together and then start discussion on this. Okay. Sloka number 6.
Smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tantamaivaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitah.
So this is one. So that means if a person leaves the body thinking about Bhagavan, he reaches Bhagavan. What happens to the other people who think about something else? So that is what Bhagavan is answering this question. Yam yam vapi smaran bhav. That means whoever is thinking about Tyajati ante kalevam. So at the final stages, leaving this body, somebody is thinking of something else. That means tam tam eva kaunte. So whatever the person that is thinking at the time of his death, that bhav, that is the nature that Bhagavan, that person ultimately reaches. That's what he's saying. So not only, so that means if a person thinks about me, he reaches me. Not only that, a person whosoever is thinking about whatever the thought that comes to him at the time of his death, that bound, that is the nature that finally he attains. That is the next stage he is proceeding. That's what it is. So it's not very difficult to understand. We are all in this, suppose we are having this conversation, we are discussing. So after the conversation is over, some people may may not have their cup of coffee. So what they will do is they will go to the kitchen, have their cup of coffee. So that means that is the last thought when they leave this physical, when they leave this discussion. Similarly, at the time of leaving this body, a person, what is most important thing that comes to his mind at the time of leaving this body, and therefore he proceeds on to fulfill that kind of a desire, and therefore the next Janma will be in the situation where he's able to fulfill that desire only, because it's a continuum. The Jivatma is a continuum. Therefore, there is no question of there is with this the Jivatma ends. Jivatma is continuous, and therefore the thought that comes at the last stage, that means the next birth, that thought will remain, and therefore he is going to fulfill that thought. That's what Bhagavan is trying to say. Only difference is when such a thing arises, that person will have to come back again to this world, and again will have to go through the samsara chakra. Whereas if he reaches the Bhagavan's abode, there is no question of coming back. So that means that is the moksha. That means he doesn't have to come back and then get into the samsara chakra. That is the only difference. Otherwise, whatever is the last thought, that determines. So I mean, last thought in the sense, for this particular this body, the person, the Jivatma having taken this body, this is the last thought. So if the Jivatma have taken millions of births, and therefore at the time of leaving each body, it is continuous, and therefore it takes up the next. When it takes up the next body, it tries to fulfill that particular desire as such. That's what Bhagavan is trying to say. So the next question, the seventh also we will continue, and then we'll discuss what are the alternatives available that Bhagavan has given in different other scriptures.
Tasmat sarveshu
Sloka number 7.
Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmara yudhya cha mayyarpita mano buddhihi mame vaishyasya samshayah.
So Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. That means Arjuna asked, how do I remember this, at the time of death? Bhagavan says, all times. That means when you think of me all times, then at the time of leaving the body also you'll remember me. That's what he's saying. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. That means even while fighting this body, fighting this war, think of me at all points of time. Think of having this thought of me about all points of time. Mayyarpita mano buddhihi. That means when you have surrendered your this mind and then intellect to me, Mame Veshyati Nasamsaya. That means you will ultimately reach me alone only. So if you keep on thinking about Bhagavan only all points of time, even at the time of when you leave this body, you will be thinking about Bhagavan, and therefore it's easy to follow that. So although what Bhagavan says looks simple, is the most difficult thing. It's very difficult to think about Bhagavan at all points of time. No? That can happen only when you have Mayyarpita Mano Buddhi. That means when you have surrendered yourself to the Bhagavan always, then of course you will be always thinking about Bhagavan as such. Now let's take all these three things together. Now Bhagavan is saying, whatever thought that comes to any person at the last stages, that the person will go to fulfill that particular desire or whatever that thought that comes in its mind. So that means the next birth will be determined by whatever the last thought that that the person has got. So you think of me, then obviously you will reach me. So that means then the question arises, is it so easy to think about Bhagavan at the time of leaving this body? Because at the time of last stages, maybe some people may be in coma, or they may not be even able to recollect themselves, and therefore the thinking about Bhagavan at that point is the most difficult thing. That can happen only if they have practiced bhakti and then thinking about Bhagavan, and therefore thinking always, even while living, think that I must have this thought, I must have this thought at the time of leaving this body. If they practice that, then perhaps sometimes they may have that one. So what is the solution for that? So the people who, then most of the people, about 99.9999% of the people may not attain moksha. So Bhagavan gave another solution in Varaha Purana. In Varaha Purana, the Bhumi Devi, Bhagavan, when he, this Varaha Avatara means for Bhagavan lifted this Bhuma Devi from the clutches of Hiranyaksha and then protected her, and therefore Bhuma Devi starts crying. So then Varaha Bhavan asked, then why are you crying? I only saved you. So he said, yes, you have saved me. But then what about the fate of so many other, all my children who are on this universe? How will they be protected by you? So Bhagavan gives a beautiful sloka. This is what is contained in Varaha Purana, which is also called as Varaha Charma Sloka, important sloka in the Sri Vaishnava Siddhantam. Sthite manasi susvatte sarire satiyo naraha dasu samye smite smrta vishwarupam chamamajam tatastam mriyamanam tu kashtapashana sannibam aham smarami madbhaktam nayami paramam gatim. He says, Aham smarami, that means I will remember. He doesn't have to remember me at the time of his death. I will remember him. Aham smarami madbhaktam. I will remember about my bhakta. Nayami paramam gati. That means I will take him to moksha. Paramam gati means ultimate goal. Ultimate goal is moksha. So I will take my bhakta to the final goal of moksha. I will remember him. When? The question is, sthite manasi susvaste sarire sat. That means when the mind is very calm, Susate Sarire Satyona. That means this when this body is completely balanced in terms of all these three, this Pitta, Kapha, Vata. These are the three, Ayurveda people say, these are the three dhatus. They have to be in a balance. So Pitta, Vata, Kapha. Dasu Sami is Mite. The dhatu is that the three, this three dhatus, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. When they are in balanced position, that means when you are hale and healthy, when your body is hale and healthy, when your mind is very calm, at that time think about me, Bhagavan says. So that means Site Smriti Susate Sarire Satyo Naraha Dasu Sami Smite Smrta Vishwarupam Chamam. Think of me as the person who is this the form of this entire universe, Ajam, that means unborn. So that Vishwarupam Chamam, then what happens is, even if he's Kashtamanam, so Tatastam Mriyamanam to Kashta Pashanasam. That means at the time of his death, Mriyaman, that even he's dying, he is in the shape of Kashta. Kashta means like a log of wood. That means he doesn't have any, this any senses, or that means he's in coma or something like that. Kashta Pashana. Pashana means stone. So if he's in the stage of stone or in a log of wood with not knowing anything happening around this world, his mind is also in a coma stage. Even if that happens, Aham Smarami Bhaktatam. That means I will remember my Bhakta at that point of him and give him that Uttamam. That means that's what Bhagavan says. If you surrender to me when you're hale and healthy, even when you're young also, surrender to me, then I will take care of you at the time of your death. I'll take you to the Nayamam Paramam. That's what Bhagavan says. Give us this assurance in Varaha Purana. Then the same thing, this if you look at this, to give the example, of course we all know, I'm just repeating that example. This Bharata, the king, who was a great bhakta, etc. Then when he was in this, when he was doing this meditation and so on, he heard this, this deer, a young deer, this mother deer, hearing the sound of this lion, then gave birth to the child, and then died. Then this young one did not know what to do, but King Bharata took care of it. And then since he was thinking about this deer always, when he died, the next birth he took was only the deer. So that's what Bhagavan is, only another example where Bhagavan's whatever he says is happening. So, so that is what it is. Therefore, how to remember Bhagavan is when you are hale and healthy. So think of Bhagavan and then surrender to him. That's what one of the Advas, Periyadvas says this. Appodeki ippode solli vaithen. That means I can't remember. I don't know whether I'll remember you at the time of death. Appodeki ippode solli. That means I have already told you that please take care of me at the time of my death. Take me into the moksha. So you remember about me. That's what it is. Another thing is, in some 1,000 years ago, when Ramanujacharya was there, so he asked there is a person called Tirukkachi Nambihal. He's called Gajendra Dasa. He used to be called as Tirukkachi Nambihal. He was a person who was doing this Alabhatta Kainkaram. That means he was doing this Pushpa Kainkaram. He was staying in Pundamalli. And then he used to, he has got a Nandavanam. That means he had got a flower garden. So he used to pluck flowers and make garlands, and then doing Pushpa Kainkaram to Kanchi Varadaraja Perumal. Every day he used to come from Pundamalli, offer flowers to him, and then go back. So that's what he was doing this Kainkaram. After some time, in fact, he was a person who was able to speak to Bhagavan in Archavatara. That means when this Archavatara at that time was this, this Athivarada. So some of you must have seen in 2019 when this Athivarada, who's the Archavatara is kept inside that tank of the temple. They bring it out once in 40 years and then do the puja and then take it back into this tank. So that was he was the Archavatara at that time, was the Athivarada 1,000 years ago. So he was able to converse like a normal person with that. He used to ask questions, or Athivarada used to reply to him also. So therefore, one day Ramanujacharya, then he knows that Tirukkachi Nambihal. Then one day Bhagavan said, no, since you are old now, so why don't you don't have to walk all the way from Pundamalli to here. You do this Alabhatta Kainkaram. Alabhatta Kainkaram means, this hand fan. So Bhagavan is this Kanchi Varadaraja Perumal has come from this Agni. That means he came to this Ashwamedha Yajna, and therefore he always feels sweating, and therefore you do Alabhatta Kainkaram. That means you do this hand fan, this Visiri Kainkaram. So like that, you do that for me. That's what he was staying always in that. And then he used to do that Kainkaram Bhagavan. So one day Ramanujacharya came and then he met this Tirukkachi Nambihal. He said, I have some doubts. Since you speak to Varadaraja Perumal directly, so can you clarify these doubts with me? He said, okay. So he asked 6 questions, and then 6 questions were taken to Varadaraja Perumal, and then he answered all of them. So the first question was, Ahameva Param Tattvam. So he asked him, who is the Paratattvam? Bhagavan said, I am the Param Tattvam. That means, that's what Bhagavan Krishna also says, Matta Parataram Nanate. Then he said, second question is Darsanam Veda Evacha. That means in this physical world, is it Advaitam or Dvaitam? He says in the conversations and transactions in this world is Dvaitam. Darsanam Veda Evacha. Then third thing is Upayeshu Prapatti. So what is the easy means of reaching Bhagavan? Prapatti. That means Sharanagati is the easiest way of reaching me. Upayeshu Prapatti. This is all Bhagavan is saying, directly saying. Kanchi Varadaraja Perumal is directly telling this, no, like a normal person will tell, to another person. So he was telling this Tirukachanam, third question. Fourth question, Antima Smriti Varjanam. So same, that is what we are now talking about. Antima Smriti Varjanam is at the end, for a person who has done this Prapatti or this Sharanagati, Antima Smriti, that means he doesn't have to remember me. Smriti means thinking about it. Memory. Varjana means you can give up that. That means a person who has done Prapatti or Sharanagati doesn't have to think about me at the time of his death. That is what Kanchi Varadaraja Perumal is giving that assurance to this Ramanuja through Tirukachanam. Then of course the other fifth question is Dehavasane Mukti Sa. That means the Videha Mukti. That means when you leave this body, you will get this Mukti. And then you wanted which Acharya you should surrender, take to. And therefore he says, Purna Sadacharya Samad. That means this Periyanamgal was a disciple of Alavanda. You ask him to take him as to be his guru. That's what it is. So these are the 6 questions. So fourth question was Antima Smriti Varjanam. That means one doesn't have to think about the Bhagavan's name. That means then you say, is it contradicting with what Krishna says? Krishna says only if you think about me at the end, you will come to me. Yes, what Krishna says is true, and what Varaha Bhagavan said is true, what Kanchi Varadaraja Perumal said is also true, because they are only saying in a qualified case situations. For a person who has surrendered to him and saying that please take care of me at the time of my death, he takes care. For all other people, the whatever Krishna said applies. That means if you don't think about Bhagavan in the last minute, you won't reach his place. Whatever thought that comes to your mind at the last stage, that is what will happen. And again, to prove another point also, amen, will he really take care of me? That of course we have got to only experience to see that, and the people who are experienced will never come back, and therefore you can't know. But there are certain indications which you can come about. For example, in this, what do you call this? Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, one of his disciples, so he was a scavenger. He was, he was refusing to come and see Bhagavan because he feels that he is such a person who is doing such a low job. So one day, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa wanted to bless him, and therefore, when he was trying to hide somewhere, then he came just in front of him, and therefore, immediately he was taken aback and he completely surrendered at his feet, and therefore, he said, then he asked him, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa asked him, was in a bhava this time. So what do you want? He said that I want moksha. Then can you assure me moksha? Yes, I will give you. I will myself come and then give you this moksha. That's what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said. So all this, there are some people who are watching that, so they wanted to check whether this man gets moksha, whether Ramakrishna Paramahamsa comes and then gives moksha. So in the meantime, of course, Ramakrishna leaves these mortal coils. Then this scavenger is in his last stages. At that time, the doctors have said that he will live only for a few hours or few minutes. So all the time, all the people get come to see whether what is the kind of experience that this man has got. So suddenly this man, opens his eyes and says, oh, Gurudeva, you have come and then completely blessed me. That means he was able to see Ramakrishna and then coming and blessing him and taking him to moksha. So these are all the indications that say, whatever assurances that Bhagavan has given, Bhagavan gets it done either directly or through his gurus. That's what is being done. So the easy path for all of us to know is to whenever our sariram and our mental things are all in good shape, at that time itself we surrender to Bhagavan, saying that, please take care of me at the time of your death. I may not have the thought at that point of time because of my prarabdha. Plus, you don't forget me. And that's what Varaha Bhagavan says. Aham smarami mad bhaktam. That means I remember my devotee at that point of time. He doesn't have to remember him. Aham smarami mad bhaktam. Nayami paramam gati. So I will take him on to the Uttama Loka. That is the moksha asas. That's what it is. So these are the important slokas, the 3 important slokas in this chapter 8. So let's continue our discussion with chapter 8 tomorrow. Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuram Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatram Sarvam Sri Krishnatnamastu Krishna 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 Krishna